everybody and welcome to Nightbringer's Watch. I am your host Fug, and tonight we will discuss some Innistrad Crimson Vow draft. Shout out to my friend Grealos, who helped me decide on which cards to choose. So first of all, what is a draft and how does it work? Well, you get to open 3 packs, one after another. You open the first pack, pick one card, and give the rest of the cards to the person who is seated next to you on your right side. And you receive the cards of the person seated to your left. Then you pick another card and give the rest to the right person, until there are no cards left to pick. The order where the booster go is first booster goes right, second left, and the third again to the right. At the end you have 45 cards, of which you have to build a 40 card deck. Depending on the mana value, curve and the number of colors you play, you want to have about 17 lands, 14 to 15 creatures, and the rest non-creature spells. You can try to draft combos and synergies, but that may not work out, so you want to keep an eye out for cards that are generally good in this format. And good are evasive creatures like flyer or unblockable ones, removal, even if it's expensive, cards that generate card advantage, such as cantrips or token creators, ramp and mana rocks, especially if you have multicolors, and you may want some combo tricks, and for the late game mana sinks. So, you may consider cards you would not even think of in Constructed. Next, let me introduce you to the mechanics of Crimson Vow. Disturb and the Daybound Nightbound Circle return from Midnight Hunt, though the Disturb cards do return as auras this time, instead of spirit creatures. And while we're talking about it, Disturb. When your card with the Disturb mechanic is in your graveyard, you may pay the Disturb costs, which most times are higher than the initial cost of the card. If you paid the Disturb costs, you return the card to the battlefield transformed to its backside. If a Disturbed card would leave the battlefield, you have to exile it instead. It becomes day the first time a card with Daybound enters the battlefield. From then on, it becomes night as soon as a player does not play a spell on their turn, and it becomes day again if a player plays at least 2 spells on their turn. The active player is key here, and it does not matter if the opposing player plays something or not. The card will always enter the stack with its front side, but enters the battlefield with its backside, if it is night. Furthermore, is the mana value of the backside equal to the front half. The third mechanic is generating of blood token, which are new to Magic and are artifact tokens. They work similar to the clue tokens, which I don't think returned from Midnight Hunt. Instead of paying 2 generic mana, tap and sacrificing it, you only pay 1 generic mana. Tap, discard a card, and sacrifice this artifact to draw a card. And there are lots of blood token generator, like Angie, made of this honor you see here. As next mechanic, I want to show you Cleave. Cards with Cleave have part of the rules text set in square brackets. You can play the card for its normal cost, in which case you have to do all what is printed in the rules box, including the text in square brackets. You also may cast the Cleave costs instead of the normal costs. If you do, you can ignore the text in square brackets, and most times it's far more powerful doing it this way. A further mechanic is Exploit, which we last saw in the Tarkir block. If the creature with Exploit enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice a creature. Only one, but you may sacrifice it to itself. If you do, the ability on the card activates. The last ability in the set is Training, which is similar to Mentor ability found in the latest Ravnica cycle. But this time, when a creature with Training attacks, together with a creature with higher power, you put a +1/+1 counter on the training creature. If you would attack those 2 creatures you see here, you could put 2 +1/+1 counter on Savior of Ollenbock. Flashback and Decay do not appear again, though they had been in the last set. And I personally miss Madness, which had been an ability we saw in the previous Innistrad set. Now to the Archetypes. According to Gavin Verhey, senior Magic designer, there are 10 archetypes you can try to draft. These are Blue-White Spirits and Auras, which are built around the Disturb mechanic, Blue-black zombies, where exploit goes well with. Black-red vampires, which evolve around blood tokens. Red-green werewolf, using the day and night cycle. Green-white humans, with training, +1/+1 counter, as well as human meta shenanigans. And then black-white, life game meta stuff. Black-green toughness. Blue-green self-mill. Blue-red non-creature spells. And red-white training and attack, where you get benefits when you attack with at least 2 creatures. And now to the main part of this video. My personal picks you should keep an eye out for if you want to draft something good. And here is how it works. I will show you 5 cards of each color and some for artifact and multicolor. I will not include rares and mythics since most of them are strong. In fact, I will show you some cards in this rarity you should not draft. Furthermore, I try to stay away from cards with special conditions, like cards that say whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield, or whenever you gain life, or even cards which refer to special abilities. And before I start with white, here are some honorable mentions of cards which survived the hunting. Welcome back, Snarling Wolf and Bramble Armor. So here are my picks you should keep an eye for, if you happen to be in those colors. To start off, let's get into white. Card number 1 is Distracting Geist. For 2 and white, you get a 2/1 spirit which taps creatures of the defending player when it attacks. Also, it has Disturbed for 4 and a white, where it becomes an aura. The enchanted creature receives the tap down ability of the spirit. I think this is pretty strong since it gets around blocker pretty easily. Next we have Radiant Grace, which already is an uncommon aura for white. Enchanted creature gets +1/+0 and vigilance, and when it dies, Radiant Grace returns to the battlefield, transformed to Radiant Restraints, an aura curse which says that creatures controlled by the enchanted player enter the battlefield tapped. Getting rid of creatures with haste or potential blocker is pretty strong. The third white card is Angelic Quartermaster, an uncommon angel creature for 3 white and white, with flying. Though it is just a 3/3 creature, it strengthens up to 2 other creatures on your battlefield with a +1/+1 counter. As fourth, I want to show you Astval Shield Basher, a common human soldier for 3 and a white, with 4 power and 2 toughness. When it attacks, you may pay 1 generic to give it indestructible. It may die quickly to removal, but if you can attack with an indestructible creature, you may get rid of some of blockers without losing your attacker. And your opponent will think twice to block, so it is easy to chip in for some damage. Once it's indestructible, your opponent can only get rid of it if you sacrifice it or it gets a minus equal to its toughness. The last white card is Fierce Retribution, a common instant for 1 and a white. It says destroy target attacking creatures, but it also has Cleave for 5 and a white. If you have enough mana, you can ignore the attacking part of the sentence. It is a cheap removal, and white removal most times are restricted to attacking or tapped creatures, and with just mana value of 2, it is pretty efficient. Since 99% of draft decks depend on attacking, and the ability to ignore the attacking part makes it a great card in this format. Next, let's talk about blue. First of all, Wash Away. It is an uncommon instant with Cleave. For blue, you can counter a spell that wasn't cast from its owner's hand. Pretty strong against Disturb cards. For 1 blue and a blue, you counter any spell. The best counter in the set, since every other counter than Syncopate also costs 3 but have some other restrictions. Geistlight Snare, for example, costs only blue if you hit certain conditions, and it can counter any spell. Well, unless the spell's owner can pay 3 generic mana, so Wash Away is pretty strong. Next up is Gutter Skulker, an uncommon creature for 3 and a blue. A spirit also has a relevant creature type in the set, and 3/3 is not that bad. But I list it here because it is unblockable if it attacks alone. And it has Disturb, also for 3 and a blue, to give any creature this ability as an aura. And it pairs well with our next card, which is Mischievous Catgeist. Despite being cute as hell, it is an uncommon cat spirit creature with 1/1 for 1 in the blue. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. It also has the start for 2 in the blue, with which it becomes an aura named Cat-like Curiosity, granting the cat's ability to draw a card. So whether you enchant Gutter Skulker with Cat-like Curiosity, or a mischievous Catgeist with Gutter Shortcut, they go well together, but they are still good all on themselves. The fourth blue card is Whispering Wizard, which also is an uncommon creature. It costs 3 in a blue and has base power and toughness of 3/2, which is okay, but once each turn it can create a 1/1 spirit creature token with flying. A repeating evasive creature generator should be pretty awesome. We finish blue with the blue instant, a common for 1 in the blue, which transforms any creature into a base 5/5 certain until end of turn, called Serpentine Ambush. It is a nice combat trick, and base power toughness means +1/+1 counter stay and increase the strength furthermore. Also, it does not imply that it loses all abilities, so you could take some advantage out of it. Black is next on our list. Let me start this color with Undying Malice. It is a common instant for black, and a pretty strong combat trick. Until end of turn, target creature simply does not die the first time it would die. Instead, you return it to the battlefield from the graveyard, tapped but with a +1/+1 counter on it. Those effects have proven to be pretty strong in other sets. You want to make sure you block with the creature, and whether you trade or jump block, you get your creature back, stronger than ever. So, either you go out victorious and have your creature left, or you get your blocker back. Also, good to save your creature from a wrath effect. We also got an exciting reprint. From the original Theora set, we got Hero's Downfall. Now they created to an uncommon instant instead of a rare one, but still a flat out destroy target creature or planeswalker, for 1 black and a black. The next card is similar to Olivia's Midnight Ambush. Though it costs 2 black instead of 1 and black, Bleed Dry is a common instant which gives a target creature -13/-13 until end of turn. Even our next mention can't withstand that. The card I am talking about is Unhallowed Phalanx, a common creature for 4 and a black. It may enter tap, but it is a 1/13. You may block anything with that creature. Well, except for Evasive Flyer and unblockable stuff, but still pretty strong. It's a good card, really. The last black card is an uncommon sorcery for a black, or 2 black if you pay the cleave cost. Dread Fugue says that a player reveals the hand and you choose a non-land card from among those cards. That card must be discarded. If you did not pay the cleave cost, it is restricted to cards with mana value of 2 though. Still pretty strong, especially on turn 1 if you can disrupt the opponent's early game. And late in the game you should be able to pay the cleave cost to get rid of the opponent's finisher. Red was hard to decide on, but here we go. I like to start with Rending Flame, an uncommon instant for 2 and a red. It deals 5 damage to a creature or planeswalker, and you hit a spirit. It also deals 2 damage to that permanent's controller. A cheap removal with a chance to throw in some extra damage to your opponent. Next is an uncommon creature called Alluring Suitor. It costs 2 and a red and has base stats 2/3. It is okay on its own, but if you can transform it by attacking with exactly 2 creatures, it becomes strong. You get a 3/3 trampler that grants you red and red, which does not deplete until your turn ends. And for red and red, it and another target creature each gain +1/+0 until end of turn. A powerful mana sink for your late game. The third card I want to mention in red is Reckless Impulse, a common sorcery for 1 in a red. It exhausts the top 2 cards of your library, but you may play them until the end of your next turn. It is a kind of card draw, granting you some card advantage, similar to Light Up the Stage, which only differs in its mana value of 2 and a red, and the potential to be cast for in red. A sort of a middle course, so to say. Further, we have Ballista Watcher at day and Ballista Wielder at night. For 2 red and red, you get a 4/3 uncommon creature, which is on its own pretty good. But you can also pay 2 red and tap to deal 1 damage to any target. On its back half, you have the same effect, but you do not have to tap it, and if you hit creatures, they can't block. That said, you can sink your mana into that ability to get in 1 big attack without your opponent having the chance to stop your creatures. But the strongest red card in the lower rarity slot has to be Ancestral Anger, a red common sorcery, a cantrip which gives the creature trample and +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is 1 plus the number of Ancestral Anger cards in your graveyard. So it is some kind of crash through, but instead of granting all your creatures trample, it powers up 1 creature. But the strong part here is that you draw a card for only 1 mana. Now I like to talk about my personal favorite color in Magic, green. And I start with Wolf Strike, a common instant for 2 and a green. And if it's night, a creature you control gains +2/+0 until end of turn. After that, it deals damage equal to its power to a creature you do not control. That is the kind of removal you get in green, and as an instant, it is pretty strong. An enabler to Wolf Strike like Brambleworm help you killing the enemy's creature. Brambleworm is an uncommon worm creature for 6 and green, with reach and trample and with power toughness of 7/6. Also, you gain 5 life when it enters the battlefield, and you can pay 2 and a green and exile it from your graveyard to gain 5 more life, an aggressive aggression stopping force. Next up is Nature's Embrace, a flexible common aura for 2 and a green, which can enchant a creature or a land. If you choose to enchant a creature, it gains +2/+2, but if you choose to enchant a land, it produces 2 mana of any color instead of 1. Depending on the state of your game, it can ramp you, or, if you have enough mana, it powers up a creature, so it is not a dead card if you draw it late. Reclusive Taxidermist is another card that may ramp you. It is an uncommon creature for 1 and green, with tap at 1 mana of any color, but it can grow pretty strong. As long as there are 4 or more creature cards in your graveyard, it gains +3/+2, making it a 4/4. The last green card I chose is Infestation Expert, an uncommon creature for 4 and a green, a 3/4. If it enters or attacks, you create a 1/1 insect token. But as soon as it becomes night, it generates 2 tokens instead, through the same triggers. More creatures to do damage to your opponent or to jump block. Last but not least, I want to talk about artifacts and multicolor cards. There I like to start with Honored Heirloom, a common artifact. It may cost 3 generic mana, but is a solid mana rock just for tapping. Also, you can remove the disturbed cards in your opponent's graveyard by paying 2 and tap. I will draft this card for sure if I go for 2 colors and above. If you are in red and black, you don't want to miss Blood Tithe Harvester. For black and red, you get a 3/2 uncommon vampire that has a blood token in its back for you when it enters. And you may tap and sacrifice it to give the target creature -X/-X until end of turn, where X is twice the number of blood tokens you have on the battlefield. But you can only activate it as a sorcery. In black and green, you can profit from Ancient Lumbernut. You can cast this uncommon creature for 2 black and green, and each creature you control with a higher toughness than power assigns combat damage with its toughness. Goes well with the phalanx mentioned earlier. And it itself is a 1/4, and with this card, it affects only creatures with higher toughness. Older versions with such an effect often affected every creature, reducing the damage a 3/1, for example, would do to 1. In red and green, you get a pretty strong werewolf. Child of the Pack is a 2/5 uncommon creature for 2 red and green, which generates 2/2 wolf tokens for 2 red and a green, and you do not even have to tap it, so you can use all of your mana left at the end of the opponent's end step. And at night it becomes a 5/5 creature with trample, which buffs all other creatures you control with +1/+0. The last card I want to talk about here is Wildspawn Spider. For green and blue, you get an uncommon 2/3 creature with reach. At the beginning of your upkeep, you mill a card, and for paying 2 green and a blue, tapping and sacrificing it, you can create a 1/1 insect creature token for each creature card in your graveyard. But you may only activate at sorcery speed. If you need to go white, you want to make use of this effect. Okay, that would be all the cards I would recommend to draft, but remember that these are just recommendations. You should go for cards that fit into your theme. So, if you happen to draft one of the earlier mentioned archetypes, you should go for those cards that support your strategy. But those cards I talked about, I think are good in general and would fit in every deck, if you happen to be in those colors. Let us quickly talk about cards in the upper rarity you should not draft. And I like to start with Jacob Haugen. The card I'd say is in general really strong. In draft though, The good thing is that this creature is cheap with 1 and a blue, and for tapping it kinda loots. You draw a card and then exile it. If you activate this ability, you may also pay 4 blue and a blue to transform it into its legendary backside enchantment. It means that you can play cards exiled with this permanent, either front or backside, for 0, once on each of your own turns. But I think it will be hard to play this card. Opponents want to get rid of it as quickly as possible, so you may never see the strong backside. And then you may have exiled cards for nothing. Splendid Reclamation is another card I would recommend not to draft. It costs 3 and green, and you return all end cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Though I think it might be good in Constructed, and in All-Star and Commander, I think it has little value in Limited. If you not happen to play a self-mill deck, you may only return an Evolving Wilds. That said, it's not worth considering to play this card. The last card you should not pick is Demonic Bargain. You have a 40 card stack. 7 of those cards happen to be your starting hand, and until you have enough mana to cast this card, you drew at least 2 more cards. So a quarter of your deck is already gone. And then you want to exile 13 cards to search for a card, and the rest of your 18 cards? I do not recommend that, since chances are high that you exile the card you want to search for. But it has some cool art from Sam Guy. So, that's it for this episode of Draftstars Crimson Vow. Now it's your turn. Where do you agree and where do you disagree? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, for liking, sharing and subscribing, and I'll see you in the draft videos. Bye!